This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. At 4 years old, an age at which many have yet to learn how to read, Susan Polgar was playing chess in early 1970s Hungary and winning. Her age was one thing, her gender was another. Instead of letting that deter her, Polgar set her mind to defying expectations and convention by becoming one of the first female chess grandmasters. And attaining that title is just one stop along the journey she's described in her new memoir, Rebel Queen: The Cold War, Misogyny, and the Making of a Grandmaster. Susan Polgar is back in St. Louis for a book event at the Clark Family Branch of the St. Louis County Library, and she joins us now to talk about her memoir. Susan, welcome back to St. Louis on the Air, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much. It's my great pleasure to be back in town.
So, Susan, the reason that you're in St. Louis has to do with your book and with local connections. From 2012 to 2021, you were the Webster University chess coach, and you built an extraordinary legacy there. What was it like to work with such a winning team?
It was fantastic, and of course, lots of thanks and praise goes to the leadership of Webster University, the then president, Bess Strobel, and the provost, who is now the president, Julian Schuster. They were amazing. They understood my vision. They understood what that can bring to the university, and we had a wonderful partnership over all those years.
Mm-hmm. Did the success that you experienced there, Susan, set you up to write Rebel Queen?
Absolutely. It was a big part of my life, obviously. A very successful part of my life, and I wanted to share with the world all the way from my childhood, all the challenges and roadblocks that I had to overcome, but obviously also my coaching career, which Webster was a major part of.
Mm-hmm. So, starting to write this book then, the last time you were on this show was in 2021, and it was on the occasion of your retiring from Webster University. Was this a long time in the making? Did you write little pieces of it along the way?
Well, actually what happened was I like to do things right or not do them at all. And I was just far too busy with my obligations and the job at Webster. And obviously before that as well as a player and so on. So basically when I did retire, that's when I found the time to think about it, to do the research and write a book. It took about 3 years. Mm-hmm. To write a book. So it was a very fascinating journey. I discovered a lot about my family or even about my own story, things that I didn't know or didn't remember. It was very fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. And what else have you been up to apart from writing the book?
Well, that was pretty much a full-time job. I also have a foundation, the Susan Polgar Foundation, that we do a lot for youth, opening them doors in chess or even beyond chess, through chess. My foundation has awarded over $7 million in scholarships and prizes through our partners, such as Webster University and others. So I'm very proud of that work as well. And now I have a bit more time to devote to that as well.
And that is something that is covered toward the end of your book. So as we come up sort of to the beginning of it, this is a memoir. Why is it that you chose to take that route instead of, for instance, working with someone who would write your biography?
Well, I think if you read the book, and I know you did, you'll see there is a lot of emotional and intimate details of my life that I've never shared before. And I just felt it was the right format, given all that it wasn't just a biography of recalling the facts kind of thing, right? It was I took a more emotional take on
the feelings there,
of the book. And I think it had to come from my own voice rather than from a third person.
Yeah. Now, the cover of this book features a photograph, and there are also photographs inside the book. Can you talk with us about what we're seeing?
Absolutely. You would see on the cover myself as a 4-year-old when I just began my chess journey, and I look pretty serious in that photo.
Yes.
And it was taken, I think, shortly after I had my first big championship win, when I won and kind of made a big splash by becoming the elementary school girl champion for Budapest, my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And not only winning it, but winning it with a 10-0 perfect score. And if I look back, putting it in context with the fact that I was literally only 4 years old, while my opponents were 2 to almost 3 times my age and size.
Yeah.
It's I was tiny. I still needed phone books or pillows to sit up to even see across the board and reach across the board. So it was a huge sensation, and that was just the start of my story. And yeah.
How much of that do you actually remember, Susan? And how much of that story have you heard told over time?
That's a good question, and of course I can't be exactly sure, but I remember some flashbacks for sure of those days, of sitting on the phone books or pillows, and people being shocked that how can even a little 4-year-old girl play chess, period.
Mm-hmm. What was your sense of that win? I mean, did it feel like something extraordinary at the time?
Well, on one hand, it did, because people were telling me that they are amazed. At the same time, chess at the time was just a game for me, something fun. And to some degree, obviously, at the age of 4, I didn't fully comprehend its significance either. So I was just a 4-year-old little girl.
Yeah. The title of your book, it's Rebel Queen, and then it starts with the Cold War, and misogyny comes after. And in the introduction, I'd mentioned your age and gender. How is it that those two factors, what was going on in, politics, what was happening in government, and your being a girl, how did those things come together?
That's a very good question. You're the first one to ask that, and I've been interviewed a lot in my life, not just in relation to the book. But yeah, so on one hand, besides the number of negatives of the communist system, one of the few positives was that theoretically everybody was supposed to be equal. Which is a great concept in itself, right? And that includes men and women and so on. Practically, obviously, one of the biggest problems I faced with the communist system, that they want to control you. And basically, you have very little freedom in doing things that are different than what everybody, like literally everybody, is expected to do. So whenever for example, my parents wanted to homeschool me. At the time, that was a revolutionary idea in a system where everybody's supposed to do the same, right? And, talking on the other part of your question about sexism, that came more from the people rather than the government themselves, although they used it that because women, girls weren't really playing much chess, and they definitely weren't playing against men, they were saying that, girls should only play with other girls and not against boys or men. So it was a combination of the two that but from the government perspective, it's about you're supposed to do what you're being told. That's kind of the message. And within that, they used my gender against me as well. But as of my gender, the sexism came just as strong within the community, within the chess community, within society. that, my parents were told, oh, you're destroying your daughter, she should be playing in the sand, she should be playing with dolls, she should learn to dance. Chess is not something for girls, So I kept hearing that over and over and over as a little girl. And then, of course, later came specific discriminative decisions, not wanting to let me play in open competition against men.
Mm-hmm. How is it that your family, because at that point, whether you're 4 or before you turn 10, up through the early teen years, it is your family that is making decisions with you. How did they respond to what the government wanted you to do? I mean,
like chess.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'm very thankful to my parents that they were, not only that they had the vision, but they also had the strengths and the willingness to take the risk. Because I have to tell you, back in those days, standing up for your beliefs, if it was against the standards or the expectations of the government, you could face anything. Mm-hmm. Like my parents were threatened to be taken away, put in foster care because they disagreed with my parents' way of raising me, which meant letting me play chess, something I loved, right? And they were threatened even, to put in mental institution, that how can somebody say that a girl could ever be a chess grandmaster among men or world champion? How can somebody even say something like that? It's almost as if my father would have said that, okay, he's gonna go to the moon or Mars,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so they were very brave, and it was very risky.
Mm-hmm. And as we're talking about the Cold War, to be very specific, what you experienced coming from the Hungarian government, that was what you were feeling?
Yeah. I mean, it was very interesting because not every family decides to involve their 4 or 5 or 6-year-old in kind of big conversations, right? But I was very fortunate in that sense that my parents never hid it from me. It wasn't like one of those that not in front of the child, you know what I mean? They were raising me in a very open environment in that sense, and they always made me part of the conversation. Even though I obviously didn't fully necessarily understand everything, but I think I grew up quicker than normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mostly surrounded by adults, and not only that they explained me things, but I was present at many conversations that they had with other adults, mm-hmm. or sometimes even the authorities.
Yeah. So do you feel that you were playing chess, that in some ways it made you grow up too fast? Did you ever have that feeling?
Well, now that I'm much older, obviously, and looking back, and a mother myself, raised 2 boys of my own who are adults now. Obviously, it's a very different way of raising children, but I think it's, to be honest, it's probably a better way, mm-hmm. because what most people do, but whether by choice or by no choice, they let their kids go to school and let pretty much society raise their kids on a large part. They are in school the whole day, maybe after school, and so on, right? And, the way I look at society today, unfortunately, while I'm happy the way my 2 boys turned out, but in many cases it doesn't turn out so well. Mm-hmm. So I'm overall, I wish I had the circumstances to homeschool my own kids, and unfortunately, because I got divorced from their father pretty early on, it was very complicated. I couldn't, but I think it's definitely a good way to raise kids, mm-hmm. having them homeschooled.
And through that all, I mean, there's so much that is covered in this book. We obviously are not going to get to many, many parts of it. What was it about chess that made you feel like it was worth it to stick out all of that?
Well, chess, first of all, is a beautiful game that I was very passionate about. I really loved. And I think when I discovered the game by accident, actually, my father was very happy because he loved chess, even though he had nobody to play with at home. But it's a very fair game relative to many other endeavors where it's a lot more subjective matter of judgment, right? In chess, it doesn't matter that I was tiny, that I was a girl, So it's kind of an equalizer, and all it matters whether you make good moves or not so good moves, and as a result of it, whether you win or you lose. So it's a much fairer sport than maybe dancing or figure skating, where it's not so clear black and white if one performance is better or worse than the other, right? They may be both wonderful, but only one will win. So in chess, kind of, you have more control of the result, of the outcome, and I think that was something that I appreciated as a little girl, that I can feel equal to even adults, grown men. And it's very few things you can do as a 4 or 5-year-old, where you can have that feeling. And that was very motivating to me back in those days.
And there's actually a line from the book about realizing that grown-ups could be fundamentally wrong. It actually is one of the ones that made me laugh out loud as I was reading it.
Yeah, true.
We're going to take a very quick break here, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
Welcome back. Let's return to our conversation with world-renowned chess grandmaster Susan Polgar. The former Webster University chess team coach is back in St. Louis with her new memoir, Rebel Queen, The Cold War, Misogyny, and the Making of a Grandmaster. We're discussing the book ahead of a 7 p.m. event tonight at the Clark Family Branch of St. Louis County Library. Now, before the break, Susan, we were talking about what it is that's kept you in chess. We talked about your experience growing up in Hungary. What is it that brought you to the United States?
Well, that was a little bit of a coincidence. I was coming to the U.S. Since 1985 to tournaments, and I made a lot of friends over the years. And at one point, I came actually for a training session to New York in 94. And I met my first husband in New York, and we got married, and that's why I moved to the U.S.
And then coming to St. Louis, what was the...
Coming to St. Louis was I brought my institute, the Susan Polgar Institute for Chess Excellence, better known as SPICE, moved it here from Texas. We found a wonderful partner in Webster University in giving opportunities for young, talented chess players to combine their higher education with their chess development. So I absolutely loved every minute of being in St. Louis. St. Louis always was very kind and warm to me.
And part of the reason you were coveted, that people wanted you to come, is because of the accomplishments you were able to make part of your record and your story. Now, there are many wins that you recount in your memoir. One that stands out for several reasons is the victory you recorded when you were 21 years old at a tournament in Pamplona, Spain. Now, before you read part of this book, Susan, can you describe why that particular contest was so significant and what it took to get there?
Yeah, so ever since I was a little girl and discovered the game, I was always shocked and didn't understand why there are no women who are grandmasters. And it was my dream from age 4 to show the world that didn't believe it's possible that, yes, a woman can earn the Grandmaster title just as the men do. So obviously when that day came, that was very, very special.
So I'd like to hear you share from your book. And this, again, is about a very, very significant moment in your career.
Yes, and not only in my career, actually, but I think for history of chess, for women in chess. Mm-hmm. So here is the quote from the book. It's difficult to describe the torrent of emotions that came pouring out of me the moment I became a Grandmaster. This was something I had wanted more than anything. It's what got me up in the morning and kept me at the chessboard for hours a day. I had built my entire life around this goal for years, and now I had it. My immediate response was more physical than emotional. My legs went numb, and I felt a buzzing in my ears, as if my entire body was recalibrating to this new reality. Once that subsided, I was left with this warm glow of contentment that seemed to emanate from every part of me. A need that had become a deep part of my psyche was now at long last fulfilled.
And that's an excerpt from Susan Polgar's new memoir, Rebel Queen, The Cold War, Misogyny, and the Making of a Grandmaster. It was released just 2 days ago on March 11th. What does reading that aloud in 2025, after your book has come out, what does this bring up for you?
Well, it gives me pride. It gives me great memories. It reminds me that all the struggles I had to go through was worthwhile to open the door, to show the world, to show other women, to motivate, inspire other women that nothing is impossible. And that's ultimately the message of my whole book, that if you have the love for something, if you're willing to work hard at it, you have the passion, you can accomplish anything you want. There are no limits.
Yeah. When it comes to the sexism that you had to deal with, Susan, is there an example from even your teen years in which you were confronted with not only playing a game, but also navigating the game of male-dominated chess?
Well, there were a number of instances, including sexual assault, that I had to endure and lucky to escape. Mm-hmm. There was an instance when I was at a chess tournament that a fan that was coming to the tournament on some days all of a sudden followed me and caught me I was running forward. I was going with my father and my coach, and I had to run to the restroom. So I ran ahead, and he caught me unexpectedly and followed me, and on the third floor balcony tried to assault me sexually. And when I resisted, and obviously it was a guy like much bigger than I am, older than I am, and it was the scariest moment of my life, you know. As I resisted, he said, "I'm going to throw you out of the balcony," you know. And I said, I'm looking down on the ground. I said, "Oh my God, this is not how I want to die." You know, luckily I managed to resist until he heard my father and coach's footsteps just in time. And then as he did that, he ran away.
Mm-hmm. And you were just 12 or 13?
Yeah, but I was a rather developed girl. I looked more like 16.
Sure.
So that was a very scary moment, but more on the professional level as well. Obviously, there were a number of instances. For example, when I qualified to the World Championship cycle from our national championship, I wasn't allowed to compete due to my gender.
Mm-hmm. What did you do in those moments?
Obviously, I was very distraught. I was very sad. And I have to tell you, it's something I wrote in the book as well, that one of the things that kept me going, that my grandma, my maternal grandma, reminded me of, that she was an Auschwitz survivor, Holocaust survivor. And my daughter, if you think this is tough, you don't know what tough is.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of put it in perspective for me, that if she could survive those horrors of the Holocaust, which, by the way, over 300 members of our extended family did not. They perished in the horrors of Auschwitz. Then I have no right to complain. I just need to, work harder, use it as a tool, as a motivation to fuel me even more, to work harder and prove myself even more on the chessboard.
Mm-hmm. Susan, when you became a female chess grandmaster, did you feel that you had taken a big chunk out of what was then and is now what is the chess patriarchy?
I think so, yes. I made it, I proved it to the men, but I think it was equally important to show it to my fellow women, because strangely, even the women themselves, because I guess we were told so many times that it's impossible, most of the women did believe it themselves. And I think when I showed it that, yes, it's possible, I paved the road, not just to my sisters, Judith, who was the second woman who earned the Grandmaster title, but also today there are 42 women who are Grandmasters. So we made serious progress.
Yeah.
And of course, still a long way to go.
What kinds of conversations do you have with girls and women in chess?
Well, I encourage in my foundation, that's the primary mission of my foundation, to encourage girls and women that they can reach their dreams and goals, but understanding that having the dream and the goal is the first step only. After that, you need to work equally hard as the guys do. Unless you're willing to do that, you're not going to get to the very top as the men do.
Is there anything that someone has said to you that you call up maybe in those moments when you're tired, when maybe you would rather be doing something else for many reasons, including, the reason you retired had to do with your health and with a back injury that you sustained. What is it that keeps you going on this path? Because at this point, you've already made history. Why not stop here?
Well, I'm still motivated to spread the message and the message of the book, which is nothing is impossible. And I think it's important in our society, and especially for our youth, to believe in themselves, to find their passion, whatever it may be, and willing to work hard at it. And I think if they do that, they can accomplish. And there will be roadblocks, just like I went through a lot. And that's exactly what I wanted to share with my book, that yes, it's not going to be a smooth ride. There is always something or somebody that's going to try to take you down, whether your rivals, whether, in my case, my government or, but, you can do it as long as you have the passion and you're willing to work hard and for a long time.
Right. Susan, earlier you had talked about facts, and then there was emotion and feeling. And that was what motivated you to write a memoir, for you to write it yourself. And I don't want to let you go today without talking about how much joy and fun there also is in the everyday experiences that you share. That's really what I enjoyed most, I think, about this book. The description of how you celebrated that Grandmaster win in Pamplona with your family. And then earlier I'd mentioned that when you were 7 or 8, you realized that, grown-ups could be wrong about things. Trash talk is another thing that I was curious about. What does chess trash talk sound like? I mean, what is your brand of trash talking?
Well, that's, I remember especially in my youth, there was a lot of kind of, I remember like one thing we would play and my opponent made a mistake, and it's nice to come back from a losing game, or it's it's going to be an easy win. I'm playing a girl, they would say things like that.
Right,
It sometimes sounds mean if you not in it, but it happens quite a lot, even today, And then sometimes, of course, that fuels me to punish them. They say, it's going to be easy game. Well, let's see who laughs last, and talk back, But of course, that only happens in casual games, not in tournament
Not
games.
in serious ones, right. So you have come back to St. Louis with this book, and you did have a launch party on the 11th, on Tuesday, but this is your first stop. Why was it important for you to come back here to St. Louis?
Well, obviously, St. Louis is the chess capital of the United States, and it's becoming even partly of the whole world. So it's definitely a very appropriate place to come back, besides the fact that it has been my home for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have a lot of friends and supporters in town, and I think it's just the perfect place for the first stop on the tour.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would make the biggest difference, looking at where we are now in sexism, in chess? What would make the biggest difference in getting us to sort of the next level?
I think educated our sons, our men, because at the end of the day, it comes from them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's raising them from childhood, that women are equal, women need to be respected. Women gave you life, in fact, right? Just for no other reason. So in general, women need to be respected as mothers and also as equals intellectually as well.
Mm-hmm. I hope there'll be a lot of men there tonight at the library.
I'm sure there will be.
Susan Polgar is a chess grandmaster and the former coach of the Webster University chess team. Her new book, Rebel Queen, The Cold War, Misogyny, and the Making of a Grandmaster is out now. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today, and again, congratulations.
Thank you so much. My pleasure being here.
Susan Polgar will talk with fellow chess grandmaster Yasser Seirawan about her book at the Clark Family Branch of the St. Louis County Library at 7 p.m. You can find more information at slcl.org.
This episode was produced by Elaine Shaw.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorn. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.